It's recording now, it's doing it.
Right, you've pressed it. Okay. Hello, welcome to this inaugural episode of a very long podcast that could last for, up to 28 episodes. And it's about you. Who are you?
I'm Mr. Smith, or VT, whichever way you prefer. I'm going to tell you a story.
What's the story about?
The story is about the last couple of years, I guess. The last, 18 months, really, in particular.
It's been a funny old time.
Yeah.
Collectively and individually.
It has, yeah.
Yeah. And over this past 18 months, what would you say the main themes of your story are going to be?
I would say not being afraid to make a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
And equally trusting yourself.
I
think it's a combination of those two things.
Okay. Because it's hard to tell the entire story of 18 months in a coherent manner on a podcast, we're going to give it a peg to hang on.
Yeah.
And the peg is going to be
the 28 lunar mansions.
Which are?
So, the lunar mansions are a way of dividing up the sky, the same way that the zodiac is a way of dividing up the sky. And most people know the zodiac from Aries to Pisces. And over the course of a year, the sun moves through all those different zodiac signs. But over the course of a lunar month, the 28 days, the moon does exactly the same cycle. It will go through all of the different zodiac signs. And whereas for the sun it takes, on average, about a month to go through one of the signs, for the moon it only takes about 2 to 3 days, something like that. It stays in each sign and then move on to the next one. And those different ways of dividing up the sky, the way that the moon travels throughout and the way that the sun travels, are called lunar mansions.
And it might not be clear at first as to how we're going to hang it on the lunar mansions, but we are.
We are, yeah. And to also add some more spice to the mix, we're not going to go through them in numerical order.
So you won't be able to play the podcast all the way through?
Not until it's all done.
Yeah, it's a jigsaw.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened then, 18 months ago, roughly, thereabouts, to kick off this whole story?
So I went through, it was when the lockdowns were in full swing. And the opportunity came to do something that I'd planned on doing for a long, long time, but never really had the opportunity, or the willpower, or the convenience, or whatever to do it. But that was to do what I would now call my SGA work, but at the time was a bit more nebulous and scrappy, and I wasn't really quite sure what it was that I was doing, but I was certainly doing something. And that was a story in and of itself of a good, intense 8 months in the run up to that, of having that KNC experience.
So just in case we've got any stupid listeners who know nothing, could you explain what HGA and KNC are?
Yes, so HGA is an abbreviation for Holy Guardian Angel, which is an idea that is linked directly to Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn and things like that. But it's a much older and much broader idea, the fact that you have a higher self, or that you have a spirit that is directly linked to you that you can talk to find out what your purpose is, what you're here for, and all that kind of thing. Your true well, as Crowley would say it. And that as an idea had always been lodged in my head since I'd learned about it, and the opportunity to do it came, and I did it. And there's a very famous book called Abramelin, which a lot of people who are interested in the knowledge and conversation, which is the K and C bit of that, with your higher self or your holy guardian angel. So in Abramelin, one of the things that he describes as part of the outcome of this experience is that not only do you have this very sacred and divine and profound experience of meeting this spiritual creature, and that you get to find out something very personal about yourself and about your own destiny and all this kind of stuff. Familiars is trying to wreck the house. There are also other things that come from it. So as soon as you've met your holy guardian angel, there is also then a requirement to bind the 7 princes of hell. Which is the bit that I didn't really take too seriously in the whole kind of meeting your holy guardian angel thing, because it was that bit that I was focused on, and not the other bit, which I thought read more like 1001 titles kind of thing.
Just before we go on to the 7 princes of hell and the 7 brides of the 7 princes of hell, however, could you just tell us just a little bit about how you did the HGA work, about what that period of time entailed, about how you were going about it practically?
Yeah, isolation. You take yourself away from mundane life. You then also go into a rather intense process of introspection, where you remove things from your life that aren't serving the purpose, and it's a very instinctive process that you find yourself in. There's also a lot of ritual involved, the most famous being the Liber Samek rite that Crowley writes about and developed from the headless rite, which is a ritual from that's got a long heritage to it. And I would say that over the 8 months of withdrawing from other people, about analysing myself, about listening to what it was that my intuition was telling me that wasn't serving me, that I needed to get out of my life, that I needed to cut out. I then did the Liber Samet ritual proper, and the result of that was a 3-day experience of what I would describe now as meeting part of my soul. Really. It was a divine. It was the part of me that is immortal, and that I got the opportunity to speak directly to the best that I could possibly be, like an archetype of me, if you like. And that within those days of communion, there was a lot of backwards and forwards about difficult periods in my life, harsh things that had happened, and the reason that I had to go through those experiences, and the reason I had to go through those experiences was to get to that point there. that it was all part and parcel of the same thing, and that whilst for me in this meat bag it was like 8 months of work that had taken me to get there, it was actually a lifetime. It was the 40 odd years of life that had led me to that point, not those 8 months. And that I needed to be more outward looking in my practice was one of the main things that I got from the experience, I guess. The fact that I should be talking to other people about it, and it's not just there's a really great book about the tarot called Meditations on the Tarot, where it talks about spiritual drunkardness, where you can get addicted to these experiences of gnosis or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just hoard it. You don't do anything with that experience. And so one of the things that I did take from it was the fact that I shouldn't be quiet about it, and the fact that I should talk about it.
Yeah.
So, which always makes me laugh, because there's a lot of people out there who've got a lot of hang-ups about your holy guardian angel, whatever, or your helpers and your allies and stuff, and you're not supposed to say the names in public and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, there's loads of scurrilous whispers around this kind of practice.
I love that song.
That I just don't think are helpful to people. And I think that we are living through interesting times that need as many of us as possible to be open, rather than believing some of the bullshit that's on the internet. Personally.
Yeah, and goodness me, there's a lot of it, and let's add to it. Let's put more out. So you've done your HTA experience, and then you mentioned that another part of the work that you've been doing was this business with the 7 Princes of Hell.
Yeah, so it's one of the things that I have come to realise is that mythology is very important, and our mythology in the West, in Western Europe, was a Christian mythology. In fact, it's probably more accurate to say it's a materialist paradigm at the moment, but it's a Christian heritage, isn't it? And so if you practice magic, you have to be familiar with the mythologies that you live within. And so Christianity is one of those things, and within Christian mythology, the other place that isn't heaven is called hell, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so that's the terminology that expanded around, but the reality is that it's much more complicated and much more beautiful than perhaps that might lead you to believe, because what we're actually talking about are those eternal energies that surround us and drive so much of what we experience and what we will experience. And that when you become, I think one of the best ways of understanding the SGA is that it just opens up a mechanism within you that you can then engage with different intelligences in a way that you couldn't do before, or perhaps you wouldn't trust yourself before. So, loads of people have weird dream experiences or see ghosts or whatever, or there's loads of things that happen around people all the time, but they haven't got that internal mechanism that enables them to engage with that experience in a way that's helpful and healthy. And I think that as we go through this story, that's one of the things that I would like to elucidate with people a bit more, is the fact that there are ways of experiencing the world that we've all been told are not true or aren't real, and that's the real bullshit. And the fact is that there are things that you can do to become more aware of the environment that you live in and the people who surround you, some of whom are human. And the ability to trust yourself and your intuitions, and that you have enough silence within your head to know what voices are you and what voices aren't you.
Yeah.
And that you can listen to some of those, and they'll whisper things to you about stuff to do and things to make. And that as you do those, you will learn more about the world that you live in and the things that surround you and what you're capable of. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, not at all, but it was cool. I was talking about the princes of hell and how they came into it.
Yeah, so in a Christian mythology, we might think of a place for the dead,
Mm-hmm.
and that would have different ways of getting to it. We might think of those things as gates, perhaps, or doors, or something that we might need a key to get through. And the reality is that the seven is lots of things, but the easiest way to start thinking about it is that it's the days of the week. And that there are different spirits with different offices on the different days of the week. And that through understanding the right keys to turn, the right ways to listen, behave, that we can engage with them as intelligences. So the seven princes of hell, that is a dramatic title. Is what we're really saying is that there are these seven important people that it's possible to meet, speak to, work with. But to do that, there is a lot of things to do first. So these seven have got lots of different names. The electors or other different titles. But when you times 7 by 4, which is the other important number, we get 28. This takes us back to the dimensions. And that's where we get the 28 from. It's the 4 weeks of the 7, if that makes sense.
It does.
When I first started reading about grimoires proper, there were several books that really helped me to get my head around what it was that I was actually reading, one of which was Aaron Leach's Secrets of the Magical Grimoires, which is a brilliant book, came out in the 2000s, which helps you to piece together these weird manuscripts. So I should probably talk about grimoires a little bit. And also a book by the late great Jake Stratton Kent called Geosophia. And that was the game changer for me in terms of not seeing the grimoires and these magical demons as called as from a Christian lens. It was to take it back a page, take it back a chapter, and to show that these demons at one time are actually old gods and spirits, or daimones they used to get called. And so that was something that I needed to learn, to not be put off by all the leather jackets and tattoos, I guess.
So how did you go about even starting to think about making contact with these spirits?
It was purely by accident.
Yeah.
So part of my HGA work was to learn Kabbalah, essentially, and to learn the Hermetic Code of the Golden Dawn process. So I was going through that set of initiations of making tools and learning about the elemental weapons, and I got pretty much to the end of that stage. I think I'm one of the few people to have actually worked through Donald Craig's Modern Magic all the way through. I got to the bit where I was consecrating the elemental weapons, and it was going on in tandem to other things that were going on, really. The HGA experience for me was not a linear one of this happens and then that happens and then this happens. It was like it was running on 5 different tracks at the same time. So I was reading the Orphic hymns and playing around with the Orphic hymns, as well as doing stuff like the Golden Dawn stuff, and as well as experimenting with, as well as reading things like Geosophia about the Grimoires, and just trying to get my head around a whole lot of knowledge. At the time I thought I was trying to get my head around a whole lot of knowledge. What I realise now is that I was actually just onboarding a lot of information that I needed.
Yeah.
And then I had my knowledge and conversation experience, this 3-day thing, and then I'd got to the stage where I'd made all my elemental tools, and I had to go through the process of consecration, and on a whim I decided that I was going to try and do them on significant days. So, and this is what had come from the Orphic stuff. I'd been doing experiments on the different days. Mondays obviously ruled by the moon, so I would do like an Orphic hymn of the moon on a Monday, and started having some weird experiences that way. And so I wanted to consecrate the chalice that I'd done, the water symbol, on a Monday, and the next full moon that came up on a Monday was in Cancer. So that made sense to me to do it then, because it was a water sign, and I thought it just accentuates the water stuff. And I did the whole consecration as Donald Craig sets out in Modern Magic, and I read all the Hebrew angel names and all this kind of stuff and all that. And it all went pretty much straightforward. And then the moment that I went outside to empty some of the incense off my burner, I looked up and the moon was directly above me, and it was a full moon, like I said, and it was so intense I just had to stare at it for a few minutes. And it was, I remember thinking to myself, this must be what lunacy feels like, because I felt so attracted to the moon. I felt like I was falling in love with the moon by staring at it in the light of the moon. And it was almost like an erotic experience with it. And I think I call it Selene, which is one of the Orphic names, and I don't know, said something. And then as I came inside and shut the door, as soon as I did the bolt on the door, I heard very distinctly behind my right ear the voice, Hecate. And it scared the bejesus out of me, first of all, because hearing the voice is weird.
Yes.
And secondly, it's like, I've never done anything with Hecate. I've never had any attraction towards Hecate, witchcraft or anything like that. I was a ceremonial magician, goddammit. Keep my fingers clean, and I have a nice robe, and put some nice incense on, and this is the circle that's sacred and clean. Not smelly witches like Hecate.
Yeah.
And I felt her presence. I felt her presence right with me, and I was honoured and privileged, and I was like, I've just been doing this big massive rite, and I'm very honoured that you're talking to me and stuff, but I've got to go to bed. I'm knackered, so I was very polite and just did a license to depart, because I knew you're supposed to do a license to depart for Spirit talks to you, so I did that. And then the day after, I was like really buzzing about it, because it's like, wow, that was special, because it's like a spirit has come to talk to me, it's a guy who's come to talk to me, and it's like, But the one thing that I was always familiar with on my sort of magical journey is that you don't have to work with a spirit. Just because it's engaging with you, it doesn't mean you have to work with it. It's a choice. And so I started to talk to people. Because if you remember, we'd been talking online, hadn't we? And we'd met online with a few other people, and the whole of the occult living room and website and stuff. And I went on there the day after, and I related this experience, and there were several people on there who were practitioners who worked with Hecate and that, and so it was like I was talking to them about it. And then it was just there in my head. It was like this Hecate, and then she came back about a week later. And I had this very, very intense, what do you call it? When you're sort of falling into sleep, but you're not asleep. It's a Gogic sort of, there's a word for it. But it was like one of those types of experiences where I knew I wasn't asleep, but I was in that drowsy state. And she really grabbed hold of my lapels and started like sort of explaining herself to me in a way that I was a bit confused with it at first, because it was like there were lots of different traditions that she was using to talk to me. It was like Kabbalah stuff that she was using to talk to me, like the concept of Bina, which is Saturn 3 and all this kind of thing. And she said stuff like about her being the midwife and the fact that she was there when I was born and she'll be there when I die. And it was like a lot of stuff related to soul and immortality and things like that. And then the line from Nietzsche kept going through my head as well, about all great things must first wear terrible masks. And because it was intense, it was scary, and I felt like I couldn't move. It was like the fuselage painting of the nightmare, you know, it's sat on your chest and you can't move. It was like that. But she said to me, we need to make an agreement. And then she identified a place that was a crossroad, and she identified an offering that she wanted, and then that was about it. And she sort of disappeared, and it was like, wow, that was wild. And then she came back the night after, and it was 3 nights she came back, which is important.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's all the more. In fact, I'll get onto it when I talk about somebody else, but she made an agreement with me that I would make an offering in a month's time, over 3 days, the day before, the day after the taking the license to make an offering. The second day that she came back, I was actually sat downstairs and I was on the couch. When she came to me, she said, well, she didn't say anything at first. She put her hand inside my forehead, and I couldn't move my arms, and it was a very, very scary and intrusive feeling. And I struggled against it, and at that point she started laughing, but not in a mocking way, just in a soothing way. And I said to her, what have you put inside me? And she said, it's a key, silly. And then there was lots of other stuff, but that's the most important bit, because it was round about a week, maybe 2 weeks later, something like that. No, I think it was a week later. I had a second visitation, but from a different spirit. And that spirit was Sergat, who can unlock anything.